and I need you to do something right now. Hit that like button, subscribe if you have not already, and share this video with everyone you know who cares about Africa. Because the world needs to see this. The world needs to know what France is doing. And the world needs to understand why Ibrahim Traoré matters. Thank you. Now let me tell you exactly what happened. The Russian Foreign Intelligence Service, known by its Russian acronym SVR, released an official statement on February 2nd, 2026. Let me read you the key parts. Quote, Emmanuel Macron has authorized his special services to launch a plan to eliminate undesirable leaders in Africa. Quote, whether inspired by the American operation to capture Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, or imagining himself as the arbiter of the fate of African peoples, Macron has made this decision. Quote, France's involvement in the January 3rd attempted coup in Burkina Faso, which was successfully thwarted, has already been established. The rebels were tasked with killing President Ibrahim Traoré, one of the leaders of the fight against neocolonialism. Let that sink in. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is not speculation. This is an official statement from one of the most powerful intelligence agencies on Earth. Russia is directly accusing France of attempting to assassinate the president of a sovereign nation, and they have the receipts. Let me take you back to January 3rd, 2026. It was a Saturday night in Ouagadougou. Around 11 p.m., Burkina Faso's security forces intercepted a plot that was about to be executed. The plan was terrifying in its precision. First, they would kill President Ibrahim Traoré, either at point-blank range or by mining his residence. Second, they would destroy the country's drone base. These drones are critical to Burkina Faso's fight against terrorism. Third, a ground military intervention by external forces would follow. This was not a coup. This was a coordinated assassination and invasion plot. Minister of Security Mahamadou Sana announced the full plot on January 6th. He said, quote, our intelligence services intercepted this operation in the final hours. Audio recordings were recovered from the conspirators, communications linking them to Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba, the former president who Traoré removed from power in 2022. Damiba has been living in exile in Togo. 70 million CFA francs in funding was traced to Côte d'Ivoire. But here is what the SVR just confirmed. France was behind all of it. Paris was orchestrating this from the shadows, using proxies, using exiles, using money funneled through third countries. Their goal was simple: kill Traoré, install a puppet government, and crush the Pan-African movement once and for all. They failed. And do you know why they failed? When word spread on social media that something was happening on January 3rd, the people of Burkina Faso did not wait for official statements. They did not wait for the army to protect them. They went into the streets themselves. Hundreds gathered at major intersections and roundabouts in Ouagadougou. They chanted slogans of support for Traoré. They declared themselves a human shield around their leader. Videos from that night show chaotic but determined rallies under streetlights. People waving flags. People ready to die for their president. Some of them were young people who had never been involved in politics before. They saw the alerts on their phones. They looked at their families, and they walked out into the darkness to protect a man they had never met. That is the power of Ibrahim Traoré. He inspires ordinary people to do extraordinary things. When dawn came on January 4th, the plot had failed. The conspirators were arrested. Traoré was safe, and the people who had gathered all night went home exhausted but victorious. They had protected their president with their bodies, with their presence, with their willingness to stand up when it mattered. And now Russia has confirmed that they were standing against France itself, against the French secret services, against a plan authorized by Macron personally. Those ordinary Burkinabe people in the streets at midnight stopped an operation backed by one of the most powerful countries in Europe. If that does not give you chills, nothing will. Minister Sana said it best. This latest mobilization of the people to protect their leader, Comrade Captain Ibrahim Traoré, bears witness to their determination to support the irreversible march toward the liberation of Burkina Faso from the chains of imperialism. That is what this is, and that is why France is so desperate to stop it. Now let me tell you something that makes this even more significant. This was reportedly the 23rd plot against Ibrahim Traoré since he took power in September 2022. 23 times someone has tried to remove him. 23 times they have failed. Why? Why does the West want this man gone so badly? Because Ibrahim Traoré represents everything they fear. He is 37 years old, the youngest head of state in Africa, the second youngest in the world. Within months of taking power, he expelled all French troops from Burkina Faso. The last soldier left in February 2023. He formed the alliance of Sahel states with Mali and Niger, 3 countries that kicked out France and chose sovereignty. He withdrew from ECOWAS, the West African economic bloc that was being used to pressure independent nations. He nationalized gold mines. He achieved food self-sufficiency. He built new infrastructure. He renovated the national stadium that Thomas Sankara built in 1984. He became a symbol of what Africa can be when it refuses to kneel. When Traoré visits other countries, African communities mob him. They line up for selfies. They chant his name. He is not just a president. He has become arguably the most popular leader in Africa and among the young African diaspora in the West. Why? Because he speaks like them. He dresses like them. He fights for them. He wears his combat fatigues and red beret everywhere he goes. He carries a sidearm. He does not hide behind bodyguards in fancy suits. He is a soldier president who still looks like a soldier. And his words cut through the diplomatic nonsense that African leaders usually speak. When he talks about terrorism, he says it comes from imperialism. When he talks about development, he says Africa must do it ourselves. When he talks about the West, he does not beg. He confronts. People call him the new Thomas Sankara, the revolutionary leader who transformed Burkina Faso in the 1980s before being assassinated in 1987. The man they called Africa's Che Guevara. Sankara kicked out the French. Sankara built infrastructure. Sankara vaccinated millions of children. Sankara planted millions of trees. Sankara changed the country's name from Upper Volta to Burkina Faso, the land of upright people. And then Sankara was killed by Blaise Compaoré, who ruled as France's puppet for 27 years. Now Traoré is finishing what Sankara started. He renovated the stadium Sankara built. He is building the academies Sankara dreamed of. He is creating the sovereign, independent nation Sankara died for. And for that, they want him dead. According to the SVR, Macron's plan does not stop at Burkina Faso. The next target is Madagascar. In October 2025, Michael Randrianirina came to power in Madagascar. He made a decision that infuriated Paris. He chose to develop relations with BRICS instead of remaining in France's orbit. The SVR states that French authorities are now working on ways to overthrow Randrianirina and restore a loyal regime. This is the pattern. Any African leader who chooses sovereignty, any leader who develops relationships with Russia, China, or other non-Western powers, any leader who refuses to be a puppet, they become a target. The SVR statement puts it bluntly. In essence, France has moved to directly support various terrorists who are becoming its main allies on the African continent. Read that again. Terrorists are becoming France's allies in Africa. This is not about democracy. This is not about human rights. This is about control. Now, let me tell you about the bigger picture. While France plots assassinations, Russia is building something different with Africa. In December 2025, the second Russia-Africa Forum was held in Cairo, Egypt. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov led the Russian delegation. What came out of that forum is extraordinary. Russia and African nations agreed to create independent financial chains that can withstand Western sanctions. New payment mechanisms that bypass the dollar and the euro. Lavrov announced that 84% of trade between Russia and Africa is now conducted in Russian rubles. Not dollars, not euros, rubles. He invited African countries to join the A7 platform. This is a Russian international finance system that allows payments in any currency. Nigeria and Zimbabwe have already joined. A mechanism is being developed specifically to counter unilateral Western sanctions. Africa and Russia standing together against economic warfare. Direct relationships between central banks are being established. No more going through Western intermediaries who can freeze your money at any moment. And perhaps most symbolically, the African Union and the Collective Security Treaty Organization have established diplomatic ties. This is a new world being built, a world where Africa is not a victim, but a partner, a world where the dollar does not dictate who can trade with whom, and Ibrahim Traoré is at the center of it. In May 2025, Traoré traveled to Moscow as a special guest of President Vladimir Putin. He attended the Victory Day parade commemorating the 80th anniversary of the Soviet victory over Nazi Germany. He stood alongside Xi Jinping of China, Lula of Brazil, and Maduro of Venezuela. Putin sent a special jet to bring Traoré to Moscow. When he arrived, African students and expatriates flooded the streets to greet him. They took selfies with him. This was not just a diplomatic visit. This was a statement. The youngest leader in Africa, standing with the world's rising powers on one of the most symbolic days in Russian history. During their meeting in the Kremlin, Putin acknowledged Burkina Faso's contribution to defeating Nazi Germany. Around 30,000 people from modern-day Burkina Faso fought in the anti-Hitler coalition as part of Free France. Think about that for a moment. Africans from what is now Burkina Faso helped liberate Europe from fascism. They were put on the front lines as cannon fodder. Many of them died so that France could be free. And now, 80 years later, France is trying to assassinate the leader of that same country. Traoré himself made this point in interviews. He said that some people do not even know that our grandparents fought in that war. They were used and discarded. Their sacrifice was forgotten. But Putin remembered. He honored it. He acknowledged the debt that Europe owes to Africa. This is the difference between Russia and France. Russia treats Africa as an equal partner with a shared history of fighting fascism. France treats Africa as a possession to be controlled. Putin said, "Today we are united by a common goal of fighting terrorism and extremism. We will continue to help the Republic in suppressing the radical groups that are still active in certain parts of Burkina Faso. And Traore responded with words that cut to the heart of everything. The terrorism we are witnessing today comes from imperialism, and we are fighting it. The terrorism comes from imperialism. That is what France cannot tolerate. A young African leader on the world stage pointing the finger directly at the real source of Africa's problems. Let me tell you what Russia is actually doing to support Traore and Africa. Training. Russia is helping Burkina Faso build its defense capabilities. Personnel training, counterterrorism expertise, education. The Russian government's scholarship quota for Burkinabe citizens has been more than doubled. This year alone, 27 additional students will study in Russia on full scholarships funded by Russia's federal budget. In total, about 3,500 students from Burkina Faso have received education in Russia. Cultural exchange. Since 2024, a Russia House has been operating in Ouagadougou. It offers Russian language classes and promotes cultural ties. Humanitarian aid. Last year, Russia shipped 25,000 tons of wheat to Burkina Faso free of charge. Healthcare. Joint scientific research, laboratory infrastructure development, and specialist training are being established. This is what partnership looks like. Not extraction, not exploitation. Mutual benefit. And there is more. At the Russia-Africa Forum in Cairo, both sides committed to something that could reshape the continent forever. They agreed on energy cooperation, high-technology partnerships, joint projects in infrastructure and development. They discussed the reform of the United Nations. Both Russia and Africa believe the current global governance system does not reflect the real balance of power in the world. Africa deserves more representation. Africa deserves a permanent seat on the UN Security Council. They recorded their opposition to new forms of colonial domination, categorically opposed. Those were the exact words in the Forum Declaration. And they announced that consultations between Russia and the Confederation of Sahel States have become a valuable new cooperation format. The first meeting at the level of foreign ministers took place in Moscow in April 2025. Russia is not just doing business deals with individual African countries. Russia is building an alliance with the most independent, most defiant nations on the continent. Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, the three countries that kicked France out. This is why France is panicking. This is why Macron authorized assassination plans, because they are losing Africa, and they know it. Foreign Minister Lavrov himself said that Paris is suffering significant losses on the continent. Losses because patriotic forces are coming to power. Forces that prioritize the interests of the people. Forces that refuse to serve as puppets of what Lavrov called the financial and political oligarchy of French globalists. Compare this to what France has done for 60 years, taking resources, installing puppet leaders, keeping the CFA franc system that drains wealth from Africa, maintaining military bases that protect French interests, not African people. And when an African leader says no more, they try to kill him. Now, I want to speak directly to everyone watching this who supports Ibrahim Traoré. You are part of something historic. Every time you like a video about Traoré, you are making the algorithm spread his message. Every time you share, you are reaching someone who might not have heard the truth. Every time you comment, you are building a community that cannot be silenced. The people who stood in the streets of Ouagadougou on January 3rd were watching videos like this one. They were reading posts on social media. They were connecting with Africans around the world who support their leader. You gave them courage. You showed them they are not alone. And now Russia has confirmed what we all knew. France is actively trying to murder African leaders. And Ibrahim Traoré is at the top of their list. This is not a movie. This is real life, and you are part of the resistance. The SVR statement concludes with a devastating assessment of Macron's policy. This makes the political bankruptcy of Macron's policy all the more obvious, as he has failed to rid France of its reputation in Africa as a parasitic metropolis that robs its former colonies and hinders their development. Parasitic metropolis. That is what France has become in African eyes. Not a partner, not a friend, a parasite that takes and destroys anyone who tries to stop it. But they are failing. Traoré survived the January 3rd plot. He survived the previous 22 attempts. He continues to build Burkina Faso, to strengthen the alliance of Sahel states, to inspire millions across Africa and the diaspora. They tried to kill him, and he is still standing. Russia and Africa are building new financial systems that cannot be controlled by the West. The A7 platform, the ruble trade, the BRICS bridge digital payment system. Every sanction, every pressure tactic, every assassination attempt only accelerates Africa's movement toward independence. The old world is dying. The new world is being born. And Ibrahim Traoré is one of its architects. If you have watched this far, I have one final request. Go to the comments right now and type "Long live Traoré." Show the algorithm that this community is real. Show the world that we see what is happening. Show France that their plots will not silence us. And if you have not subscribed yet, do it now. Turn on notifications, because when the next development happens, you need to know immediately. We are living through one of the most important moments in African history. The fight against neocolonialism is being won. Leaders like Traoré are showing that another path is possible, but they need our support. They need our voices. They need us to spread the truth when the Western media lies. So, share this video, like it, comment on it. Make sure everyone sees what Russia just exposed about Macron's assassination plans. The revolution will not be stopped. Long live Ibrahim Traoré. Long live Burkina Faso. Long live a free and sovereign Africa.